Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first planning meeting of the year. It is moved by Councillor Cairns, second by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved that the council agenda as presented on January 28, 2025 be approved as circulated. All in favor, please vote. That carries. Thank you. I'll note that Councillor Morphy could not join us today. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. We did not have a closed session today, but we will go to Councillor Cairns for our land acknowledgement statement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the First Peoples who for thousands of years before us were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work, and in particular the Chippewas of Rama, Wata Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous people and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you. This afternoon, there are 3 public meetings scheduled for one concurrent official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, 1 standalone zoning bylaw amendment, and 1 shore road closing application. Application number ZA 35-2024 for Freeburn. Application number OPA 04-2024 and ZA 37-2024 for TRG Cherokee Holdings. Application number SRC 0102-2024 for Chiquillo. The Planning Act requires that a public meeting to be held before council decides to adopt an official plan amendment, pass a zoning bylaw amendment, or close a shore road allowance. The public meeting serves 2 purposes. First, to present to council and the public the details and background to the proposal, and second, to receive comments from the public and agency before council makes a decision. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the public meeting. The Manager of Planning Services, Adam Agger, will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of public meeting was circulated. Staff will then advise of the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning amendment and provide any additional information that is relevant to the application. Staff will further summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor or against the proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, staff, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendments, and shore road closings and road closing will be then considered by council later this afternoon. If anyone from the public in the council chambers would like to request notification of the decision of any application, please complete the form provided on the table at the back and be sure to include your email address due to the, I guess we don't have a postal strike anymore, so we'll strike that from there. Although it is quite slow because I just received a Christmas card yesterday. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to advise how, when, and to whom notice of public meeting were circulated.
Notice of public meetings concerning the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters of the properties, subject to the proposed bylaw and official plan amendment, and emailed to applicable agencies. Included within the notices was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal, a site plan, and a key map showing the location of the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13. The public notice concerning the proposed shore road allowance closure was advertised on the news and notices page on the town's website for 2 consecutive weeks prior to this afternoon's meeting. Included with the shore road allowance closure public notices was a legal description of the lands affected and the date of consideration by council. The circulations concerning the proposed were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Act 2001, Chapter M25, and the town's procedural bylaw.
It is important to note that should council pass any bylaws this afternoon, there is a 20-day appeal period during which time the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies as defined by the Planning Act may appeal the decision of council. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal and in order to keep advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request and be sent a copy of council's decision on the application. Public meeting number 1. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA35-2024, Freeburn. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located east of Highway 11 on Beaver Ridge Road. The property is designated Highway 11 Special Character Area in the official plan and is zoned rural and environmental protection in part. The application was submitted concurrently with a consent application, which was conditionally approved earlier this month at the regular meeting of Committee of Adjustment. So I'll just describe the lands as the proposed severed and the proposed retained lot, just for ease of purposes. So the proposed severed lot is currently developed with a detached dwelling, an attached deck, a metal shed, and a septic system and well, which are separated from the road. The proposed severed lot is flat and well vegetated with mature trees which screen existing development. The proposed retained lot is vacant and well vegetated. The front portion of the property is flat and a portion of steep bedrock outcropping is noted further northeast across the location from the existing dwelling on the severed lot. The proposed road frontages appear to be consistent with neighboring residential properties to the east. So as previously mentioned, this application was submitted concurrently with a consent application which proposed to create one new lot and retain the other. In addition to that, as a condition of approval, a zoning bylaw amendment application was required to rezone the proposed severed lot from the rural zone to a residential rural zone, which requires new lots to have a minimum frontage of 6 meters and a minimum lot area of 1 hectare. And the application also proposes a minimum lot frontage of approximately 83.7 meters on the proposed retained lot, where 152 meters is required in the rural zone. So as previously mentioned, these applications were heard earlier this month at the Committee of Adjustment and conditionally approved pending zoning approval. You can also see here on the site schematic, the frontages that are being contemplated here are consistent with the lands to the immediate east and not out of character with the area. With respect to agency comments, the Deputy Chief Building Official and the Manager of Revenue had no objection or comment on the proposed application. The Infrastructure Technologist, no objections, and noted that an approved entrance permit and a roadway occupation permit would be required prior to any driveway or entrance being installed on the retained lot from Beaver Ridge Road. The Ministry of Transportation had no objections and did note that the lands are within the Ministry of Transportation's permit control area and that an MTO building or land use permit is required prior to the construction of any new buildings. The Deputy Fire Chief had no objections subject to Ontario Building Code and Ontario Fire Code requirements, and the District of Muskoka had no objections provided that the appropriate development control techniques are utilized to ensure that future development is appropriately set back from natural heritage features and indicates that the property may contain species at risk, and any site alteration and development must be undertaken in accordance with provincial and federal requirements for species at risk. This is just another schematic and sketch, an existing survey of the situation. So the severed lands are on the left-hand side with the existing dwelling and the retained lands on the right-hand side. Then moving into site photos. So this looks northeast up Beaver Ridge Road from the property, which connects to Highway 11 North, and you can just see in the background Highway 11 North there. This looks southeast down the road. This is just depicting existing sight lines in the situation, albeit it is difficult right now this time of year with the heightened snowbanks. This view then looks north into the proposed retained property, which, as noted, is currently vacant and well vegetated. Towards the rear of the property, you can see it does slope slightly upwards, and that would be the location of where that rock outcrop is. This is then just moving further into the retained lands, and again, getting closer to that rock outcropping beyond the trees. This is still on the retained lot to the east side where the topography flattens out. And then this is standing now on the severed property from the dwelling, looking again about at the limit of where that rock outcropping is on the retained lands there. And then just turning around there from this angle, this is the commercial property across the road from the retained lot, which is screened not only by an existing fence, but also the trees. As detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, and is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending that the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. I'll now ask if there is any comments. Are there any comments by the applicant or their agent if they're attending in person? Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Is that on? Yep. Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. John Gallagher, John P. Gallagher and Associates, 24 Hibbard Road, Huntsville, P1H1C9. I think Adam has given an excellent synopsis of the application and the policies there. Prior to submitting the application, we did meet with the Ministry of Transportation Ontario to ensure that they didn't have issue with the lot creation there. As Adam had mentioned, the lot sizes are on the frontage are significantly larger than the existing lots to the further southeast. The application was circulated. There was no objection at the Committee of Adjustment hearing for the consents, and the committee provisionally approved it. There's been no objections raised to date on the zoning amendment. I did provide a planning brief with conformity to the official plan, the district official plan, and the provincial policy statement. I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public attending in person who would like to speak to this application? Okay. Seeing none. Council, are there any questions from council to the applicant's manager of planning services or persons who's made presentation? Okay. Mr. Ager, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Your Worship, staff would recommend that the application be approved.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number OPA 04-2024 and ZA 37-2024, TRG Cherokee Holdings. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw, and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject properties are located on Cherokee Lane. The properties are designated urban mixed-use waterfront area in the official plan and are zoned residential 1 and commercial special purpose zone in the town zoning bylaw, and as discussed in the staff report. So for council's information, this involves 3 lots here. Existing zoning lot here and here are currently zoned commercial special purpose, with only the northerly lot being the one that is currently zoned residential 1. However, all the lots are within the urban mixed-use waterfront area. The subject lands are currently developed with 2 single detached dwellings, one located at 375 Gravette Street, which is the through street on the most northern piece property on screen, and 170 Cherokee Lane. The third lot is vacant, as you can see there, and well treed. The lands slope upwards to the east and contain a mix of lawn and trees. A drainage feature also runs along the northern boundary limit of the subject lands at the base of a large rock cut, providing drainage from Cherokee Lane and the surrounding lots to the lake. The applications, being an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, were submitted in order to permit a comprehensive mixed-use development on the lands within the Muskoka Wharf, which include commercial, residential, and associated land-based amenity spaces. The applicants have indicated that the proposed development will serve as the second phase to the larger development of the proposal, which has been approved on adjacent lands across Cherokee Lane. Specifically, the applications before you today contemplate the proposed development, which is darker shaded, and I'll have a more close-up there in a second, which contains one 5-story mixed-use building containing 56 residential units, 1 and 2 bedrooms on the top 4 floors, at-grade parking garage for a total of 18 vehicles, an underground parking garage that extends into the Phase 1 property, which is not subject to these applications, for a total of 52 vehicles in this phase, and 333 square meters of ground floor commercial and retail commercial uses. So again, this depiction here shows both phases together. Phase 1 is on the left side of Cherokee Lane and is faded out. The phase where these applications are on the east side of Cherokee Lane in the darker shaded color. And here is then just a zoomed in version of the development that we're looking at this afternoon. As noted in the staff report, a number of technical studies were completed by the applicant in support of the initial Phase 1 of the Starboard development, which was approved in 2024. Some of these studies were reviewed by the town and/or district staff, and some were subject to independent third-party reviews where in-house expertise was not available. The final revised proposal of Phase 1 in June of 2023, peer reviews, technical reports, and all subsequent updated technical studies were posted on the town's website. As detailed in the staff report, it is understood that the required technical reports would be updated to reflect the cumulative changes resulting from the proposed Phase 2 development at the site plan agreement stage of the development process. This approach was determined to be appropriate, and the necessary holding provisions have been included into the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to ensure this is adhered to. As it relates to the town's official plan, Section C776 states that higher density residential development shall not exceed 40 units per gross hectare, and that the actual density of development shall be established in the implementing zoning bylaw. An amendment to the official plan has been applied for that would permit an increase in residential development density on the site. However, the existing site-specific provisions of the town zoning bylaw for the adjacent wharf lands state that residential density shall be calculated on the total basis of all the wharf lands, not only on a property-by-property basis. To ensure that the proposed residential density is in keeping with the original intent of the wharf lands mixed-use development concept, staff have conducted a detailed review of the proposed residential development in relation to density specifically on this property. When the proposed 56 proposed residential units in Phase 2 are included into this calculation, the residential density for the entire wharf lands remains under 27 units per hectare, and that includes the previous approved units from Phase 1, which is far below the 40 units per hectare maximum that is contemplated by the current official plan policies. As it relates specifically to the town zoning bylaw amendment application, the proposed zoning relief for the subject property is commercial special purpose zone across all 3 lots. As previously noted, right now, only the 2 southern lots are in that zone. So it would be rezoning the northern lot from residential 1 to commercial special purpose zone. In addition to that, the addition of special provision 1335 and holding provision 24 and holding provision 25. The proposed amending zoning bylaw amendment includes site-specific provisions that would permit the development of a multiple residential and mixed-use development containing the 333 square meters of non-commercial or non-residential commercial space and a maximum of 56 high-density residential units on some of the remaining undeveloped lands within the urban mixed-use waterfront area. The amendment would also include additional permitted uses in line with the those currently permitted on the other Muskoka Wharf lands. This includes a beverage brewing and distilling, art gallery, studio, a commercial recreation museum, and marketplace as additional permitted uses. An exhaustive list of relief being sought by the site-specific zoning provisions can be found within the staff report and also within the prepared zoning bylaw amendment, which was included in the agenda package posted on the town's website. The proposed amendment, as previously noted, also includes 2 holding provisions, that was H24 and H25. One would only be permitted to be lifted if the provided number of conditions have been met, including the following: a functional servicing report, including detailed drawings of the proposed rerouting of existing sanitary sewers, has been submitted to the satisfaction of the District Municipality of Muskoka and the Town of Gravenhurst. The existing traffic impact study, TIS, be updated and has been submitted to the satisfaction of the town of Gravenhurst and the district municipality of Muskoka and peer reviewed as necessary. That hydraulic modeling be completed and the results incorporated into the functional servicing report to the satisfaction of the district municipality of Muskoka, and that the applicant enter into an agreement with the district municipality of Muskoka respecting the provisions of municipal water and sewer services and related capacity allocation, including the provision of securities if necessary. The second holding provision, which would be H25, would require that should the proponent wish to develop a beverage brewing or distilling establishment, they would need to enter into an extra strength surcharge agreement related to the effluent released into the district's wastewater treatment system before the holding could be lifted. The holding provisions outlined in the above were included in the proposed zoning bylaw and reflective of the comments provided by the District of Muskoka on the applications. With respect to comments, at the time of writing the report, the following agency comments were received. The chief building official indicated that all work is required to meet or exceed the Ontario Building Code requirements. The director of infrastructure provided the comment acknowledging the town's official plan and how it speaks to commercial parking within the wharf. Infrastructure Services recommends that commercial parking deficiencies associated with Phase 2 of the Starboard development be addressed via payment of cash in lieu of each of the 17 spaces that have been identified in the parking shortfall. The fire department, no concerns provided that all safety standards are met in accordance with the Ontario Building Code and Ontario Fire Code. The finance department, no concerns with the proposed applications. And lastly, the District of Muskoka had no concerns as all their comments were included within the two holding provisions that were previously outlined. At the time of writing the staff report, one letter from the public had been received with respect to concerns on the proposed applications. However, since that time, 5 additional letters have been received. A copy of all correspondence was circulated to all members of council. In addition to that, one last letter was received this afternoon at about 2:30 from the Muskoka Lakes Association, and a copy of that letter was provided to council as well. The letter details concerns over the letters all detail concerns over environmental impacts and flooding, the timing of development, disturbances to the area during construction, traffic, and impacts to the downtown. In this regard, in support of Phase 1, Phase 1 of the development, the applicant did complete an EIS in support of the proposal. The EIS concluded that the recommendations of the report, if the recommendations of the report are implemented through the appropriate development control techniques, that there will be no negative impacts to any natural heritage features. Further to this, as it relates to flooding, the static flood elevation for Lake Muskoka is 226.7 meters. Based on the review of the district floodline mapping, the balance of the land subject to this application, so the 3 lots on the east side of Cherokee Lane, are all located above that elevation. Further, the subject lands, as previously noted in the presentation and the staff report, are within the urban mixed-use waterfront area, which is intended to be a mixed-use area, including a range of commercial uses, servicing the residential and tourist markets, as well as medium and high density housing. The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment and associated holding provisions are structured to implement site-specific policies for the Starboard Phase 2 lands and would limit the residential density and gross floor area of the proposal and would limit the height in the proposed mixed-use building to 5 stories that is in general character with those that are already existing within the Muskoka Wharf lands. Moving then through site photos, this is looking down Cherokee Lane towards Bay Street, standing out in front of the vacant piece of property. This is then looking into those lands. And then across is the steamship parking lot. Then moving further down Cherokee Lane to the other lots, which would be on the right-hand side. Again, the Phase 1 development's not subject to this application, is on the left-hand side. The subject properties are on the right-hand side. You can see also the Alexander Retirement Home in the distance up on the rock outcropping. This is then moving to 170 Cherokee Lane, which is again currently developed with a single detached dwelling. And then this is 375 Gravette Street, which is that through lot. So this would then be the rear of the property. It is developed with a single detached dwelling and is accessed from Gravette Street on the other side. And then again, this is just looking at the rock outcropping at the terminus of Cherokee Lane. And again, Alexander would be up to your left for your reference. So as detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the applications are consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to both the district and town official plan, are appropriate and represent good planning. As a result, staff are recommending that the applications be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Egger. I will now ask for comments from the applicant's agent, Stefan Scherbak.
Hi, good
Hi.
afternoon. Thank you. Stefan Scherbak, planner with Planscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge, P1L 1Z8. I'm pleased to be here again on behalf of the Rosso Group, owners of the subject lands, and to request council support for the second phase of the Starboard development at the Muskoka Wharf area. Several representatives of the ownership group are monitoring the meeting online, and they sent me to address council today. So I'm happy to be here. This second phase of this exciting development concept is located on the starboard side of the wharf area. I'm sure you're all familiar with the area. This phase has been carefully integrated into the recently approved first phase of this development, and already several positive changes have been made to ensure that this corner of the wharf area will be developed into the vision that was always intended for the waterfront area, and also, more importantly, following the direction of your official plan. As you are aware of the first phase of development, I'll really try to keep my presentation to a minimum. Mr. Adam did a great job just with describing the proposal itself. I'll try to keep my repetitive comments to a minimum. But again, the applications in front of you are really a minor official plan amendment application that simply clarifies the intent of this development, and it includes the proposed density and general use and height of this building. The site-specific zoning amendment in front of you also includes all the applicable zoning requests. So specifically, as previously mentioned, this second phase introduces a 5-story mixed-use building that includes 56 condominium units with approximately just over 300 square meters of commercial space located on the ground floor. Public amenity areas will be shared and integrated with the first phase of development. There will be underground parking that spans both the first and second phases to ensure the entire development concept includes appropriate and sufficient residential parking. All the required updates to the technical reports, again, as mentioned, will be completed and submitted as part of the site plan stage, and the use of the holding zone must also be lifted before any works can be contemplated. This really gives the town a second layer of protection to ensure that the proposed development incorporates all of those important technical recommendations from those listed and noted reports. So from a planning perspective, I've read the staff report, and I fully agree with the detailed policy analysis that's included. It really follows the planning justification that was submitted with this application. As noted in both reports, there are a number of very similar policies within the top 3 planning documents, being the provincial planning statement, the district's official plan, and of course your official plan. A lot of the policies specifically encourage this type of development that's located in this specific area. There are a lot of similar policies that encourage the intensification within this designated urban area, again, more importantly, to ensure the efficient use of those existing services that are available today. There are a number of policies that also encourage different forms of housing that support and promote economic development and provide new employment opportunities. And again, this is to ensure that it's a complete community, both within the surrounding wharf area and the neighboring downtown area. And finally, there are also a number of similar policies that support the expansion of tourism-related development that are really already present in the Muskoka Wharf area. So this phase of development proposes, again, lower-level commercial use with higher density residential. And again, we feel this development will kickstart the wharf area revitalization. It's going to bring more people into the area on a year-round basis. Through these development applications, including the bylaws in front of you, again, you've got the holding zone that supports the use in principle. It's definitely the recommended approach here, which gives the developer the green light to update the various required technical reports. There's going to be a little work involved with getting those reports up to speed. Your staff are going to be carefully reviewing them, and also the District of Muskoka will be reviewing them as well. The holding zone will also ensure that there's plenty of discussions with the District of Muskoka in relation to the servicing to ensure the capacities there and servicing agreements. Any financial obligations are all taken care of during that process. The project, again, the last phase will be subject to a future site plan agreement. This application will include all those other site plan related items such as lighting, dark sky lighting, signage, landscaping. We cannot forget about the one very important aspect, and that's the snow storage and removal that we've seen these days. So that will also be addressed during that stage. And I think there's a few slides. I'm hoping some renderings, if I could just put them on. Yeah, perfect. And again, this is just to wind down my presentation here. Showing the renderings, of course, this is subject to change, but it really shows the integration of the first and second phases, as well as the road that's going to access and there that services and accesses both developments. I think there's one more rendering of the entire building itself. Again, it's subject to change. It's just an artist renditioning, and the general feel of the building will be situated there, with the taller end of the building located with more of a view to the waterfront area, and the shorter end of the building, which will front onto the existing Phase 1 development. So in conclusion, I share staff's professional planning opinion that subject to the approval of the minor official plan amendment, these applications conform to the district and town official plans. They are consistent with the 2024 provincial planning statement. I'll always stumble on that. And of course, it represents good planning. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I thank you once again for the opportunity to speak this afternoon.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We are going now to the pre-registered people who have registered electronically. So to speak, and there are 3 on the list. So I will now ask for comments from Christine Purdon, who has pre-registered to participate. Christine, please ensure your camera and microphone are on. Okay, there you are.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you for inviting or allowing me to speak today. I will note that my husband and I are both gainfully employed in the middle of very busy work schedules, but we made time for this meeting because it felt very important. So we have stake in property in both in 2 areas that are affected by the development, and of course there's the concerns about the construction and the impact on the neighborhood, I think, are real for the people living there. You'll see that the condominiums adjacent to a number of residential homes. I think in terms of things like restaurants and such, what about odors, garbage bin storage and collection, establishments that serve alcohol, closing time, and disorderly behavior? Those are all concerns for the neighborhood for sure. I think we're also concerned about the impact on Gravette Street. And I will note that in Mr. Ager's presentation, the last slide he showed was actually, he said it was Cherokee Lane. It was actually Gravette Street. And at the end of Gravette Street, which isn't a through street, there's a section of Trans-Canada Trail, which is heavily used by pedestrians and dog walkers and families. And so question would be, what's the future of the Trans-Canada Trail? Is that going to be still, be able to be usable? Will there be pressure to try to connect Isaac with Gravette Street? If so, that's going to change the nature of the neighborhood considerably. So the other concern for the neighborhood would be that this is a fairly rapacious development, and what is the domino effect of rezoning in that one house? And actually, I will say too that the house that is on the lot that is currently they are seeking rezoning for is actually an architectural gem. So that will be raised for the parking garage. If people put properties up for sale, what's the pressure to rezone them after they've been purchased? So it could change the flavor of the neighborhood substantially. So those are all concerns that I think we share. I guess another question that many of us would have is why the focus on high density development of the wharf when the downtown is suffering? It's kind of hard to reconcile that. Why not put effort into try to revitalizing the downtown? More importantly, I would say is the potential impact on boat traffic. So we have property right in the bay. And of course, the central attraction of the location for the condos for sure would be access to the lake. And this will result in a huge increase in the number of boats on the bay, assuming that the condo is successful and they're all purchased, or even a good proportion of them are purchased. There will be an increased demand for boat rentals, increased in inexperienced boaters on the small bay, increased in motorized personal watercraft, and I would be concerned about the impact of increased boat traffic on the ships. And then I think in terms of the health of the lake, it's interesting to hear the land acknowledgement where our Indigenous peoples were thanked as being the keepers and caretakers of the land. I'm just thinking that we're in the midst of a raging climate crisis, and the lake is going to be battling the climate crisis. And what we're doing with these developments is high density development right on a shore. And the increase in boat traffic, the impact on the shore, et cetera, does make me very concerned about the future of the lake. And also the wave action of the increased traffic on the lake leads to soil erosion. We've seen that on our property with the constant wake that has increased dramatically. We've had the property for a long time. We've seen an increase in action, and the soil erosion factor is for real. And it just makes me think about what state the lake will be in for the next generation. And so those are my major concerns. But again, I would go back to the boat traffic, the use of the lake, and the impact on its health. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So just talking with our Director of Development Services, we are making a list of the questions. We recognize that there'll probably be some repetition of some of these concerns, and so staff will make a note as we go and answer them at the end. Okay, just so council's aware of, because there were a couple questions in there, so we will get to those. Okay, so with that, we will now go to Ken Pierce, who's pre-registered to participate electronically. Mr. Pierce, can you ensure your camera and microphone on? There you are. Great, go ahead and follow with your comments. Okay, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Just turn your microphone on. No, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? So I think what we'll do, I'm not sure if you can hear us. Is there an opportunity to write something in the chat? There's no chat. Okay. So I think we're going to go to the next person on the list, Mr. Pierce, and we will come back to you. Still can't hear you. Okay, so I'm not sure if he can hear me, but that's what we're going to do, I think. So we are going to ask now for Charles Stewart, who is pre-registered to participate electronically. Okay, welcome. You're coming in.
Hello, can you hear
loud
me?
and clear, yes. Okay, go ahead.
Good. Thank you. I think that my wife, Christine, made lots of good points, and I don't need to repeat them. I'm just looking at the map of the proposed development, and if my sense of geography is correct, then just north of, there's a section north of the proposed development which abuts Gravette Street, and it appears that there's nothing there at all. Is there no plan to develop that section? Will that section remain sort of a green space, or what is the plan for that?
Okay, Mr. Egger, you going to make a note of that question? Can we just get your mailing address, Mr. Stewart, please?
Yes. 61 Honer Avenue,
Okay. And that's,
Kitchener, Ontario,
okay,
N2H2V3.
perfect. And we can use that for Christine as well?
Yes,
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you.
So was that your only question?
that's my only question.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
So I'm not sure if, is there a delay? Would they have heard me? Okay, so you heard we're going to answer the questions at the end of the presentation, like after all of you had an opportunity to speak, we're going to answer the questions then, okay? Great, so thank you very much, and we're going to go to our next speaker. So we will go back to Mr. Pierce and see if we can get him with his volume. No. So I do believe he did do a test. But we have received your letter. Guess we'll give you another shot, but okay. So we'll just give him one more minute, Madam Clerk, and then. Okay. No, I think he's frozen now. Okay. You know what? It'll give him one more minute to try and come back in, and then after that, we'll move on to the people that are here in person. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Pierce has left the meeting, so we are going to have to move on. We do have his letter that was received this afternoon. Staff will make a note of some of the concerns that were, or we'll make a note of the concerns in the letter and address those to the public when we've heard from the rest of the people here in person. So I will now ask, are there any members or members of the public attending in person today? If so, please stand, approach the podium, give your name and full mailing address to the clerk, and follow with your comments.
Good afternoon. I'm Jane Simmons, 490 John Street North, Gravenhurst, P1P 1G2. I want to follow up on Charles's question about the plan and the part of the plan on Gravette Street. It does appear to be blank, but what you have here is development creep. And if one lot is rezoned commercial, that entire street can be rezoned commercial. So the people living on that street are now living under that potential threat, because if they want to continue to live quietly on that street, they are going to be concerned all the time that their neighbor will sell and to a retail business or a commercial business. And the fact that the phase 1 was approved doesn't mean that phase 2 has to move in as well, in the sense that that now impacts another formerly residential street. And all the people living on that street are now under that threat, because once one lot sells as commercial, why wouldn't the next person sell? If there's going to be a parking lot or a development there or a building, what's to stop that from happening? And so I think that that is the question. All of the, we went through this before with Alexander and Phase 1. We've been here working to try to talk about the environment and the traffic, and all these things have been talked about, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But I think it's important to remember that what you're talking about are people's lives and their way of life, and where did they go? And that's the reality here. It's not that we're anti-development. That is not the case. We need housing, we need development, and that's what people are saying. They're saying, let's develop the Main Street, let's get more affordable housing. Affordable housing. And the discussion about building more housing implies that if you don't go for this, then you don't want more housing. Far from it. We've got a new development up from the seniors department that promises to house a lot of people at an affordable price. So my point is, I want to know too, if that lot is going to remain blank and, not used, or what's going to end up on it, because is there a Phase 3 coming? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to come and speak?
Got my Muskoka Finery on today.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Cheryl Poitras, address 1138 Windharra Road, Gravenhurst, P1P1R1. I realize that with my residential location, I don't live in the area of this development. However, as somebody that has lived the majority of my life in this town, I feel that certain things do end up affecting all of us as a whole. They make reference to a 56 unit residential. At this particular point in time, the bylaw as it stands says that they are allowed 40. I'd be interested in knowing what the developer's plans are for the number or percentage, however you would like to call it, of these units that are going to be geared to affordable housing. We have a very much aging population in this town that is looking to find ways of being able to afford to still live here. And unfortunately, I know seniors, my mother is one of them in particular, who's been sitting on a waiting list for geared to income seniors housing for the better part of at minimum 3 years. And with increases in rentals, in space in general, that does not seem like that waiting list is going to get any shorter anytime soon. I know that with regards to the new development, the new units that went up at the south end of town, there was a big pada going on in town about how they were going to be geared to income, there was going to be affordable housing, and in the long run, when those buildings were finished, the smallest minimal allowable percentage of units were for affordable housing. And with respects to the plan's representative today, constantly hearing geared to tourism, geared to tourism, geared to tourism. This town, unfortunately, in the last 10 to 15 years, and then some, has spent the majority of its time gearing its infrastructure, its development, et cetera. What's going to bring the tourism? I think it's high time we started taking care of the people who live here. With all due respect to Snowmageddon that hit us for 3 days of torrential downpour of snow like we have not seen in a number of years. The most recent time in reference to that was 2022, in which we received 2 to 3 days of snow again that kind of locked us down. As a resident that lives here and has several friends who live in the Barkway, Housies Rapids area, a week later, these people were still not able to get out of their homes because we didn't have the means to get those roads cleared. It was wonderful, with all due respect to our honorable mayor. Opening up the warming centers was great. It got people off the highway. But these people that were out in these outlying areas and couldn't get out of them to get into town, we put in a bigger development. how much of our resources, although they say we're going to take care of looking at the cost of getting these lots cleared, snow removal, storage, et cetera, how much of that, though, is going to involve resources from the town that we just simply don't have to be able to pay to do this? What is going to happen should we get another downpour of snow like that? Are we going to be rushing trucks to this development to clear the lot in the commercial space while our residents are not able to get out of their houses? I think we really need to look at ensuring as a community that we have the resources to take care of what we have before we develop ourselves to the point that we can't take care of what we have. They mentioned about the brewing and distillery. We have 2 craft breweries in this area. Do we really sincerely need another one? Do we really need to put it in a more residential type area, although these lots, yes, special purpose? Do these people really want to have that happen? We have been waiting as a resident of this town for over 4 years to have our ditches properly dredged on Winhara Road, and have been constantly told we haven't got money in the budget to come out and do that just yet. They started dredging this year. It was supposed to be done. It began in the fall, and it was incomplete. We had a drunk driver from an establishment here in town roll through our front yard, causing damage to the easement. We're still waiting for the town to finish repairing the damage that was caused. My concern with a focus on tourism that this development brings is that, again, we are focusing on temporary. It's a temporary fix. We need to start looking after our own people. We need to provide our own people with affordable housing. 56 units geared to tourism. You're not gearing it towards the people that actually live and support this town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'm just going to address the snow situation. We are having a special meeting on Friday. We've been saying it was a transportation emergency just as much as it was a snow emergency. Not being able to access those roads was directly aligned with the highway being closed until Monday night so there will be more to come on that, so you'll be able to watch that. But I agree that it's unacceptable that we couldn't access some of the people out in Houses Rapids, but it was by no means a lack of, it was not a lack of resources at the town, it was access. We were cut off from access for those roads, so I just want to make that perfectly clear. Okay, so you are making a list, Mr. Ager, of things, and I think there's some things that the agent will address as well. So we will go to the next speaker. So come on up.
Good afternoon. My name's Gord Laughlin, 565 Farquhar, Gravenhurst, Ontario. With your permission, I'd like to take the liberty of addressing some of the questions that are raised in Ken's letter, Ken Pierce's letter to the town. I'll try to keep that short, and it would be a paraphrase of some of his carefully drafted information that you have at your disposal. The first question he raises is the inclusion of 160 Cherokee Lane, not once but twice in the calculations of surface area or density area calculations. He questions how that is justified. He also points to the commercial parking spaces, 17 required and none actually provided. He then looks at the space requirement as specified in the second paragraph on page 2. He and his team looked at the aspect of parking in a second area a little later in the letter, and draws to attention the cash in lieu of factor that can be substituted, and wonders how that might figure and how it could be directed. Towards the bottom of his second page, he reminds us that there were water lots involved, but he didn't really understand that this would prevent the proper survey and deeding of any unused water lots back to the town, and apparently remembers that the developer was not unagreeable to that arrangement, but that it, for some reason, wasn't, say, championed, if you would, by the town. We recommend the town look at that and consider one of his follow-up connections to the cash in lieu for parking. On his third page, he makes brief note of the access of the infrastructure. Since the deeding of both sides of Cherokee Lane and the roadway to TRG, there would appear to be a responsibility to continue to maintain and service properly the infrastructure involved in the so-called sanitary sewer, which we also believe to be the present existence of a stream that runs quite a further back into the town than might be implied in the staff report. It is not just a neighborhood culvert or surface swale. It is a major stream out, and the town spent considerable money to upgrade and make sure that it was functional. And of course, he has concerns if parking extends from phase 1 to phase 2, how that might still be properly serviced. He also points out that he doesn't see a tabular description of some of the changes proposed or the modifications, so to speak, in the applications. For instance, normally there would be a comparison of the existing bylaw to the requirements of the new or amended bylaw. So for instance, the height of the building in a residential area might represent something like 200 or 300% increase. And he has some stats there that you can take a look at. Lastly, he raises a question which I guess I also covered in my letter, which is how do we define the wharf lands? So this notion of wharf lands, where does that end? Is everything in the neighborhood associated or connected to this area also wharf lands? Or how is it that we cross a road that used to exist and somehow that area becomes, and we include those 3 lots that are the basis of this application in wharf lands, and therefore go ahead to calculate population densities and unit densities based on the global, if you would, the dispersal of that density over the entire wharf area. So he has, in light of this, respectfully requested the application be deferred briefly to allow those types of matters to be addressed. And that's what I would leave you with at this point. And thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else?
Good afternoon, Council. My name's Gord Dernan, 38 Woodman's Chart, Gravenhurst, Ontario, P1P1Y5. I wasn't planning to speak, but I just have a couple of philosophical kinds of things, I guess, that make me wonder. Having lived here for 40 years and cottaged here for almost 80 years, waterfront property is very special to Gravenhurst and its future. And I don't disparage the wonderful development down at Friday Harbor, but I'm not really sure the Gravenhurst Bay can have and entertain and accommodate 5,000 people in the next 25 or 30 years, totally filling in that whole bay with development. The water will not handle that. But my other question to you is, why the Rosso Group is a very talented group of people. Number one, why did they not design a development down at the wharf that needed no accommodation from the official plan? Because they're supposed to be really good people, and they have lots of talent and engineers and designers and planners. They should not need that accommodation. Now, they're asking for phase 2, and phase 1 is not built yet. I don't think anybody's living down there yet. They're not enjoying the waterfront yet. If phase 2 is not approved, will the Rosso Group say, well, our vision includes both phases, and we walk away? And phase 1 doesn't happen because phase 2 was not approved. I don't know if that's in their minds, but I would think if they needed phase 2 at the very beginning, and they are pretty smart people, why didn't they ask for it originally and say, we have a 20-year vision, and we want all of this approved? Because you're approving the second phase, and they haven't even completed or started to build phase 1. Let them prove themselves, build phase 1, show it full of people and all of the great things that's doing for the wharf and the area and for the town's economic development, then build phase 2 with permission. But I'm afraid they're just using this to say, give us phase 2, and then somebody said phase 3, phase 4. Let's have Rosso build this wonderful facility in phase 1, and we will clap and cheer, and we'll see the economic development, and then we can prove phase 2. I'm afraid they may not be able to complete phase 1, let alone phase 2. So why rush it? Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to this from the public? Okay, it's not, please be respectful. If somebody wants to come up to the mic, they're welcome to do that. Okay, so seeing none, there are some questions that were meant to be answered there, so we will go through those questions. Mr. Ager? Are you, okay, you're making some notes? Great.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just jotting my final notes down. I will try to work through them sequentially during when they were asked, although I would note that Mr. Pierce, who did appear second, then had the bulk of their questions asked through Mr. Laughlin, so I'll address Mr. Laughlin's questions and Mr. Pierce's letter at the same time. So first set of comments, first with respect to the trail. Ms. Purdon spoke about the trail at the end of Gravette Street. That's being left alone and untouched. That's not part of this application. With respect to density and where density belongs, as council is aware, both the provincial planning statement, Muskoka official plan, Gravenhurst official plan, all direct development, whether it be density and intensification, all be into the fully serviced urban area. And more specifically, these wharf lands, as we heard, the OP talks about there being medium and high-density residential uses contemplated as well as commercial uses. So this is the area that's been designated and has always been designated for these types of uses. In addition to that, while it's recognized that there are some existing single detached dwellings, the lands have been designated for a long time for these higher uses. And we see over time with intensification and infill that, you know, lands change over and they finally move towards their intended uses in which they always were. So here what we're seeing on screen here is the official plan schedule, and all the lands in light pink are the wharf lands that we speak of. And when we talk about residential development being calculated across the whole area, it's that light pink. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my clicker to turn on here. So it extends from here. So that's Cherokee Lane. This is Gravette Street. So that's 375 Gravette Street, just about where my cursor is. You can see it's in the pink or mauve color, depending on how you see colors. And the yellow color is the urban residential area. So you can see there that there is a divide in between Gravette Street and Cherokee Lane. However, all the lands subject to this application, including the lot that does front on both Gravette and Cherokee Lane, are within that wharf area. In addition to that, it also extends through the entire balance of these lands over here. So when the policy speaks about talking about density not exceeding 40 units per hectare, that's for all the lands in pink. And when you add those 56 newly contemplated units, the total density is 27 units per hectare when the maximum's 40. So the maximum's 40, they're proposing 56 additional units. That results in 27 units per hectare when you take in all the lands in pink. And that still includes phase one's units in that calculation. So in terms of there being too much density, based on the policies as of right, this density would be permitted. Also, in speaking of development in downtown development versus the wharf development, we have two really focal point areas of development, and one's in our downtown core and one's in the wharf lands. The uses contemplated before you here are in keeping with the official plan policies, as you've read in the staff report and heard through my presentation. In addition to that, council is also aware of applications we've had to revitalize them on a case-by-case basis in the downtown. You know, late last year, we put 16 additional residential units into the downtown core, increasing that housing tenure. Obviously, they're more restrained by not only the interest of the property owner in wanting to redevelop the lands in the downtown core, but also the form that's already there. There's already existing buildings there. They butt up right against one another, versus in this scenario on the wharf lands, one of the lots is vacant and the other two lots are developed with single detached dwellings, which were intended to be higher density residential uses in the long term and commercial uses in the long term. With respect to the comments that were raised about garbage and the commercial businesses being down there, all the garbage would be contained inside within the building itself, so it's not being outside. Garbage contained internally. We talked about high density, and then we will move over Mr. Pierce's letter and move over to Mr. Stewart's comments. In conjunction, he echoed the comments from Ms. Purdon that I just went through. In addition to that, and this is where I'll also ask the applicant's agent to speak to it, but it was also, if actually we could get the site plan sketch, please, up, Madam Clerk, of the presentation, the site plan sketch. The question was about the portion of the lands that actually front onto Gravette Street and if they're going to be left alone right now. I can't speak on behalf of the applicant, but perhaps their client can. As of right now, on the concept plan, it's identified as park space. The building does not extend up to that portion of Gravette Street. The zoning bylaw is very explicit on the front, rear, and side yard setbacks and the building form. This is what's being proposed, and it would appear that it's green and open space. I would let Mr. Sherbach comment, though, on if there are future plans to develop that portion as it relates to Gravette Street, and just so we're all looking at the same piece. Specifically, it's this area here, which on the site plan before us remains untouched. I don't know if Stefan's here. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Sherbach, would you like to come up and address that?
Thank you. I was just texting the client as well. They're again paying attention to this. There's no plans for that portion of the property. It's green space as it stands now. I think there's quite a slope that goes up there, so it would be a big disruption to do that. So they don't have any plans to do anything with that part of the property.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Egger is going to keep going.
Thank you. So again, then we moved on to the comments from James. Again, the same comment or question was asked about the development of Gravette Street, so we just heard there. And then we moved on to the drainage feature that was present at the base of the rock outcrop. That remains untouched. We also heard about the rerouting of servicing infrastructure. That's not specific to that storm drain. That storm drain is not moving or changing. It's with respect to underground district infrastructure, specifically the sanitary, and I'll get into that as Mr. Pierce's letter had that outlined as one of his questions, so we will just put a pause on that. Then we moved into questions and the notions of development creep, or the concept of one lot can, eventually be rezoned or turn into something else. And as council is aware, we hear applications every month from individual property owners that are either looking for site-specific exceptions to their existing zone or wanting to change their zone altogether to maybe start a new business venture or add an additional permitted use so they can do something on their property. This application before you today, albeit slightly different because the uses before you are already contemplated in the official plan. They're really just clarifying what's already proposed and envisioned for the area. That's no different than any other lot on whether it's Gravette Street or Bay Street or anywhere else in town coming before you to ask for that. So, development is targeted again for the fully serviced urban area. That's where the Planning Act directs development, the provincial planning statement directs development. So we will be seeing applications before you from time to time where development will be changing and the town will be changing as it grows. But our job is to process the applications that are before you and provide the professional recommendation based on all the policy sets, and that's what we've done here today. Then we got into comments about residential development and density again. Those comments came from Cheryl, asking about 56 units where 40 is permitted. And again, if you think back to that official plan schedule that we showed and went over in the beginning of the answering of the questions, it's 40 units per hectare based on that entire land mass. So the 20 hectares is the entire site. We're only at 27 units per hectare, so they're not asking for more units per hectare based on what's already permitted in this area. Then there were also questions about how many units will be affordable. With that, I'll turn that over to Mr. Sherbak maybe at the end of this question set to answer that question. I won't have him jump up back and forth. Although I would note, when it comes to affordable housing, the town of Gravenhurst just kicked off their first housing task force meeting, led by the director Halford. So the town is looking at more affordable housing unit options where possible. Again, our job is to provide a professional recommendation based on the planning policies, based on the applications that were submitted. Mr. Sherbak can answer any questions on if any of it relates to affordable housing, but the town is working diligently on options where available, with our partners at the District of Muskoka and other landowners to find opportunities for a range of housing types. And the more housing types and forms that we can have within the community, the better the community is. Then the notion of, again, concern around density, to sound like a broken record again, density belongs in the serviced urban area, which is where these lands are. Snow removal, Mr. Sherbak did note that as part of the site plan application, they do have to do a snow removal and snow storage part of their plan. Also, it talked about the burden that would be on the town for that removal, but this is a private development. The town wouldn't be doing any snow removal on these lands anyway. So from that standpoint, it is private and the town would not be responsible. Then I'll move on to the comments from Mr. Laughlin as well as Mr. Pierce in the letter. So as previously noted, we did receive that letter from the MLA at about 2:30 this afternoon. All members of council were provided that letter. And it was characterized into, I believe, about 4 specific questions, which Mr. Laughlin led us through. So the first being, why is 160 included? And if you'll recall back to phase 1, 160 was included principally for parking of phase 1. And now, as we see here with phase 2, there's actually site-specific language in the zoning bylaw that phase 1 and phase 2 are sharing an underground parking system, and actually the entrance for all of the parking is through phase 2. So in order for the parking structure for phase 1 to begin and for phase 2 to exist, it's all, again, if Madam Clerk, I'm sorry to keep getting you to put the site plan up, but the entrance to the whole underground parking scheme as proposed right now is through phase 2, and it's a shared parking system, and the zoning bylaw is specifically crafted as such. So you can see the black arrows there on screen, which would then lead you into the underground parking structure that serves both phase 1 and phase 2. So why is 160 being included? Not only is it part of the site that's being developed, but it also acts as the entrance for the communal shared parking system. Concern over that being, a red herring, or trying to boost the numbers for calculating density. In the grand scheme of things, this lot is very small. I believe it's under 0.08 of a hectare. So in terms of moving the needle on trying to increase density numbers, as we talked about earlier, 40 units per hectare are permitted over the entire site. And even with this development before you today, we're only at 27. With respect to the second question, which then got into parking, and more specifically what was really getting at was the water lots. The lots before you today, again, are on the east side of Cherokee Lane. The site-specific official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are only for lands on the east side of Cherokee Lane. They don't have any water lots or anything to do with the water lots, which you may recall from the phase 1 proceedings, which, as we know, were already dealt with and approved last year. The third question was now getting back to the rerouting of the sanitary sewer on Gravette Street and how it moves through the property, and how the impacts from the underground parking will impact that. Well, as noted in the District of Muskoka's comments, and specifically holding provision 24, the rerouting of that infrastructure is already being contemplated. The district is aware of that, and one of the provisions of holding provision 24 specifically, noted in the draft zoning bylaw and the staff report, is that the functional servicing report has to specifically talk to and do the engineering work for the rerouting of that sanitary system, understanding that the development as proposed would impact it as it sits there today. So before the holding provision can be lifted, all the rerouting work has to be done. That would be applicant driven, it would be at the applicant's expense, and that's acknowledged both in the staff report and in the holding provision. And then the fourth piece was with respect to the zoning bylaw and not having the opportunity to see the details of that zoning bylaw. As council's aware that the zoning bylaw was prepared and posted with the draft, with the agenda package on the town's website. So that's been posted when the opportunity to review the staff report and the recommendation report was there. In the bylaw section, that's where the bylaw was written out, with all the relief being sought, available on our website for their review and concern. So that's been posted for that time. So I'm not quite sure how to address that further. With respect to there being, tabular comparison of existing and proposed, the site plan that's provided already has a zoning matrix included in with it. It talks about what the provisions are as of right and what the relief being requested is. So that's already on the drawing set that was made available. And both the official plan amendment, specific language, the zoning bylaw amendment, site-specific relief, and the language of the holding provisions were all included and are included on the zoning bylaw that's in your agenda package and available on our website. Lastly, there was one final question about how the wharf lands are mapped. I think we've all been through that now. We've seen the zoning or the official plan schedule on screen a couple times now. How those lands are classified or identified. They're identified on a schedule in the official plan and have been for a long time. And again, 27 units per hectare is where we're at when 40 is permitted as of right. Then the last comments were from Gord with respect to phase 2 being before phase 1, and why is that? part of that, I believe you just heard me answer in the earlier part. Phase 2 is really the gateway for the underground parking to Phase 1. Perhaps Mr. Sherbak can comment on the timing of which one will go first. I mean, we're calling one Phase 1 and Phase 2. Perhaps that's in the sequential nature of the way they were applied for, but whether or not they build them that way, that would be at their discretion. In addition to that, in terms of development and meeting as of right permissions, meaning just developing within what your official plan designation says and what your zoning bylaw regulations say. You know, as planning council, you're all aware that we see people come every month to get site-specific relief from their existing zones and change those zones. So that's not unique. Again, we are obligated to provide you professional recommendation based on the policy set at the provincial level, the district level, and the town level, and provide you with our recommendation on whether or not they should or should not be supported. In addition to that, it's also worth noting that all the lands within that wharf designation all have their own site-specific zoning provision. So there's not one lot in the wharf area that doesn't have a site-specific zone on it that's met its as-of-right zoning permissions, just for your own anecdotal knowledge. And I believe that sums up all the questions asked, save and except for 2 questions for Mr. Sherbak to answer.
Mr. Sherbak?
Thank you very much. I agree with all the answers that were provided. I think I was going to mention a lot of the same things. I made a lot of notes as well. So the 2 questions, Phase 1 versus Phase 2, Adam's right. Phase 2 does start with the underground parking. Really boils down to economics and cost of construction. If you're going to start the construction, you don't want to start one major phase and then start another major phase 2 to 3 years later. Cost of construction goes up. As part of this whole development scheme, the applicants have taken this into consideration, and they're going to be starting with the second phase, moving into the first. It all is being tied together through this underground parking and the amenities, so it'll all be done concurrently in terms of how that's going to proceed. With respect to the question of affordable, attainable housing, the applicants are not providing any with this development. I acknowledge the issue. I was part of the summit that was there. I think Gravenhurst is miles ahead with other municipalities in Muskoka. You've got the Alexander that has some form of development. You've got this that has another form of development. You've got Talisman at Skyline that has another form of development in terms of providing various levels. Again, the PPS speaks to providing many different types of forms. So in this case, they're not providing any quote-unquote affordable as defined by the province in this in these applications.
Okay, thank you. So I think that answers the questions that were raised by the public. So I'm going to go to council now, and I'll remind council that the time for debate is at the bylaw stage. If you want to debate the application, you're going to pull the bylaw at the bylaw stage, and you're going to debate it there. This is the time for questions for Mr. Sherbak or for our planner or anybody who has done deputation. So, not editorializing, questions, please. So I will go. I have a list here. We'll go to Councillor Cairns.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I just have a quick question for my own query, because I don't know what a SIAMESE connection is. Could someone please explain to me what that means?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I believe it's a Siamese connection, and if I'm not mistaken, that is the ability for the fire department to connect their equipment to for firefighting purposes.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. My question is about Gravette Street. The lot there, they currently have access from Gravette Street. Will that be closed off, or will they continue to use that as a way to get into the property?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I'll begin, and perhaps then maybe Mr. Sherbeck can further comment. As of right now, the legal entrance for the garage is off of Gravette Street for that through lot. However, as noted, based on the topography, this building will all be sited and oriented more towards Cherokee, and the actual entrance won't even be at that portion of the lot. It'll be on the most southern portion of the building as it's currently designed. So I don't believe they will be utilizing that for any sort of entrance or ingress to the site. Again, as of right now, it looks like it's designed as kind of a park and a passive green space, so that doesn't necessarily mean people won't be utilizing it and enjoying the outdoors, but there won't be vehicular traffic moving to and from Gravette Street through that portion.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Sherbeck nodding along. Okay, so Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I have 3 brief questions for you, Mr. Sherbeck. I'm starting off with an apology, actually 2. First, if I mangle your name,
So,
if I mangle your name.
yes, thank you.
that's
We just
inadvertent.
ask you to speak into the microphone.
Yes, I will. And the other comment is that the 3 brief questions I'm going to ask you, more appropriately, I would ask to the applicant. So I don't want to make it awkward for you, but I'll just leave them with you. My first question has to do with the official plan and some of the sections in there. And just before I ask the question, I just want to acknowledge that your comment, or Mr. Agers, that the official plan encourages this kind of development, and I agree. I've spent most of my career supporting, endorsing, and writing municipal policy and legislation, so that's what makes things work. My specific question has to do with section C7.7.5, and I'll read it aloud if you don't mind, Mr. Sherbeck. Articulates that development shall be designed to complement the surrounding area, and where practical, should development on the basis of a unique or historic theme. Consideration shall also be given to the visual impact of the development when viewed from lands outside the urban mixed-user waterfront area. So my question, sir, and again, you may want to put this to the applicant, and I will provide an answer later. My question is, any comment on that section as it pertains to the section, the official plan encouraging this kind of development? I don't think it contemplated, right or wrong, 5-story developments. But so anyway, the visual component is my concern. If you have any comment, or you can get back to us sometime from the applicant.
Come on up, Mr. Sherbeck.
Thank you. Great question. And yes, we did consider that policy. I mean, the wharf itself does contemplate this. You look right across the bay, you've got tall buildings. You know, so this has always been, you know, as part, it is forming part of the character of what the wharf, in my mind, was intended to do and what has already been approved in the development across the bay. So it had always contemplated this type of higher density, taller, not any, you know, more than what's there, but all of these buildings, specifically the Phase 1 buildings, were to be in line with those across the bay as well, so that they're not exceeding that height. So yes, that has been in place. With respect to the character, absolutely. The renderings that were done sort of mimic a lot of the old style resorts. You can see some of the architectural designs that were taken into place. A lot of the owners of the Rosso Group are very familiar with the area, have been cottaging here for years. So yes, it is near and dear to their heart, and they absolutely want to incorporate that type of architectural style into these buildings with respect to design, color, all of that stuff. So that's why I showed the renderings themselves. They felt it was important, you know, to show you and to show the public that this is top of mind. Thank you.
My second brief question is relates to the, and I have a lot of questions, but I'll only do these 3. My second question relates to the matter that we discussed at Phase 1, and that was the unused portion of the water lot. I spoke at that time very much in favor that we should acquire that property. And I note at the OLT hearing, to your credit, you wondered why the town was not interested in acquiring that. So my question is simply this, and again, you can put it to the owners, the applicants. Would you be willing to provide that property to the municipality if we were to ask for it. And perhaps it might be part of the cash in lieu, as an example. But so that's my question. The third one has to do with parking, which was also a big issue for me in phase one, and particularly the parking as it relates to the Muskoka Steamship. That's an iconic and singular draw to this municipality and to Muskoka, those steamships. Mr. Miller, the president of Muskoka Steamships, spoke to that issue a number of times with the applicant, and to their credit, they were able to resolve part of that issue. He's very concerned again. We're increasing the density, the number of people, the parking that requires, and so my question simply is again, are there ways that the applicant can address some of the concerns that we have and Mr. Miller has about retaining parking? Once those buildings are up and there's people living in them and visiting the site, it's going to be very difficult to let people, to tell people you can't park there. And that's his concern and that's mine. So at some point in time, we'd like some comment from the applicant about how they might address that. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Are you prepared to, I saw you taking some notes. I don't think the water lots, obviously, you're not going, and let's be clear, that's not part of this application, so we need to be very clear about that. So.
If I may, I can just briefly address the parking. We have had discussions with your Director of Infrastructure as well. I think he's made it very clear that the town parking lot is going to be subject to some changes that are going to be very, very, very specific to. So I think what it really boils down to is an enforcement issue. At that point, if it's your parking lot, it's no different than other private parking areas. People have their own enforcements in place, and yes, the owners are very aware. It's very difficult to manage visitors and whatnot. People are going to park where they're going to want to park, but if they get caught, the onus is on them. So. Bottom line is, yes, we have had discussions with infrastructure. We know what the town is looking to do with that parking lot, and they will respect that to the greatest extent they can. Thank you.
Mr. Egger, did we hear directly from the steamships last time they sent some correspondence? I've seen the correspondence, but I'm just double checking that I didn't miss something.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, for phase two, no. For these applications, we did not receive any written correspondence from the steamships.
Okay, thank you. Going to go over to Councillor Varney.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going back to the parking, and it's something that was in the notes to Mr. Egger. It says that the parking extends from phase 2 into phase 1 property. Does that mean it's going over Cherokee Lane or going under Cherokee Lane? How is it extending into phase 2? And then I have another question after that.
Mr. Egger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Varney. Short answer is underground, so it's going under Cherokee Lane. But if you'll recall, last year an application came before council to stop and close up a portion of Cherokee Lane and sell it. So it won't be going under the part of the municipally maintained and traveled road. It would be going under private lands all owned by the applicant. So it's an underground parking structure that traverses under phase 2 and phase 1 and Cherokee Lane as it sits right now. But once it's constructed, that portion of Cherokee Lane won't be a municipally maintained and traveled road. Council did, move to approve and close up that portion of Cherokee Lane.
Okay, and my second question is the height of the building. I may be mistaken in my reading, but it's suggesting that the permitted height is 34.5 feet. The requested height is 61.7. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Varney. The as-of-right permissions in the C4 zone are 10.5 meters, and the applicants are seeking 18.5 meters, which equates to about 5 stories. It's no different than the Phase 1 request, where that zone would have contemplated 10.5 meters, but the overall approved development was for 7 stories. So this is going to be lower than Phase 1 and act as sort of a gentle phase into the hill, into then the lower density residential areas. So the highest building will be on the water, and then this Phase 2 building is 2 stories lower than that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go over to Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try and speak into the mic. I just want to, I think I want to address the issue that has come up many times about what is the wharf project. And I think am I correct when I say the wharf project is part of this urban mixed-use area that's identified in the official plan? And so a lot of confusion comes when we say, well, these lands weren't included in the wharf project, but they have been for many, many years included in that mixed-use, the urban mixed-use area as identified in the official plan. And so really what we're doing here is making, for the zoning changes, making those residential properties in particular align with the official plan designation of this area that's been in place since beginning, before the wharf project. But the wharf project, you know, we talk about the wharf project, but there's other lands that are in the same OP area that are not perhaps considered the wharf project. Is that a correct way of looking at this?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Jorgensen. That's absolutely a correct way of looking at it. So yes, all the lands within the urban mixed-use waterfront area are the wharf lands. And I think another way of looking at this too is the official plan amendment that's before you is almost more restrictive than the parent zone, right? All the wharf lands, if you're within that designation, the urban mixed-use waterfront area lands are permitted up to 40 units per hectare. So that's across the entire lands. This development, the official plan amendment specifies that on these pieces of property, they could only go up to 56 units. If that official plan amendment wasn't there, in theory, they could develop all the way up to move the needle from 27 units per hectare across the entire site to get to that 40, and then no other site within that area could develop. So this is actually more restrictive than the present official plan policies, and is really nailing down the ground floor area, the density on that site specifically, so it doesn't take up other development opportunities across the entire designation.
Yep, go ahead.
So just to be clear, the 40 units per hectare is not on any given lot. It's across all the lots in that mixed urban area as identified in the official plan.
That's correct.
Which we often call the wharf.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so I do have a list here, but I'm going to go over to Councillor Strength because she hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, and then I will circle back to people who've had a question. Councillor Strength?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I guess directly maybe to Mr. Zurbrek back. I was going to try and I thought I could do it, but I really couldn't. I'm curious, Mr. Durden sort of touched on it, what your timelines are. So we're going to start with phase 2 and then progress to phase 1. In how long? Do we start with phase 2 to see how positive it turns out to be and then start with phase 1? I'm just curious how it's all going to play out.
Mr. Sherback? Not sure you can answer that, but give it a shot.
Difficult, but the terms of when it's starting, I don't know. I don't have the answers to that yet. I mean, they're looking to maintain the process. They have a few things to do in front of them, so that's more important to get that stuff done. In my mind, one can't work without the other. So if you're starting with the phase 2, there's the parking. You're not going to end the parking at the road and then all of a sudden build it afterwards, the underground parking. So to me, and again, I'm not a construction person at all, but I think they do go part and parcel. What building goes faster than another, I think is just really up to, their construction design, their efficiencies, and how they're going to move forward with that construction. So don't know if I answered that. Thanks.
Mr. Egger, you had something to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I think just also again for council's benefit and those that are following along too, should the application be approved as detailed in the holding provisions, the applicant will be required to update all of those studies, which will take some time, and also go through the site plan agreement process. So there's still another application that would need to be filed and submitted with those supporting studies, and some of them may be subject to peer review. So it's not as if a decision's made and shovels hit the ground. There's still a number of things to happen.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Can we pull up this site plan, please? There was some comments about like runoff or like a small creek. I'm just wondering if you can kind of show me where that runs through the property right now and how, if it's needed to be rerouted, how that will happen.
So the drainage. My apologies, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hunter. On the site plan, I've now lost my. You can see a faint gray line just north of the property that kind of traverses up from the site. I'm kind of hovering over it and it's moving there. Actually, if this is still the presentation, it's at the base of the rock cut on the left. It's not on the subject property, and you can kind of see there's a piece of concrete infrastructure and a pipe. So that's actually not on the property. It's just north of the property and traverses through the site and then moves along that rock face at the base of Cherokee Lane. And again, on here for your reference, there is a faint gray line just north of it. So that gray concrete area would be as it's closely touching to the property line. But again, it's not proposed to be rerouting. The only rerouting that's happening would be the sanitary service infrastructure that runs underneath Gravette Street.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cairns.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. Just a couple of questions. One of them was what Councillor Hunter had asked, because specifically I'd asked about that drainage. And my question is then, and I have a couple, with the drainage and the way that this, on the site plan, the circular looks like an in one side and then out the other, or circular, kind of like a roundabout at the end. And I'm just wondering how staff will then be able to access that drainage system to be sure that they can make sure that it's clean and clear, because it has its problems over the years, and it goes way back. So that's just one question. How, if we don't own that end of the property, how will the town access that portion of the storm drainage that goes into the lake from the upper areas? That's one question.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Cairns. A great question. Council will recall when the application was before you for the road closure, the Director of Infrastructure provided some very specific language that will need to be included into an agreement before that happens. And that's specifically so the necessary easements are in place over these lands to ensure that the town can get in there and maintain that piece of infrastructure. So that was looked at and thought about at the time that road closure application was before you, and will be provided through the necessary agreements in that process.
Thank you. If I may.
Okay, yeah, just hit your button again. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, and if I may, so thank you for that explanation, because it's extremely important that that area be left untouched and able to, with the amount of water and different things. So we all know that the wharf area has flooded in the past. It's flooded right up to, well, the actual steamship office was flooded out. That parking lot was flooded. So I'm hoping that the development can host that without flooding their underground parking. Just one comment that I'd like to make that that goes back, and may I share, I've had this since 2022. This is the actual wharf design, and the initial wharf design that didn't end up turning out to be exactly like what they had drawn us in the pictures, because we, at the time, council did not allow any development on the water side other than the 2 restaurants. Everything that was supposed to be there, and you'll see it in this book, if anyone wants to have a look, it was all the development had moved away and that there'd be a boardwalk. And along that boardwalk, there is the natural features of, we were told that there are strict rules as far as down on along the shoreline, that trees that come down go back into the water. Rocks that come out go back into the water, so that it's takes care of our fish habitat, make sure that we don't destroy that. So I'm just worried about water drainage, extra salt being put down on the roadways to, make sure that they have access to this little roundabout turnway. All that water, all that, salt that could be put onto the road for keeping us from being slippery is now going to be going into the lake. So with the larger development, or a large development at the top, that only means everything's going to flow even further into the lake. So the lake is we look at it now, it has its issues. So I'm just worried that with such a large development, how are we going to protect the shorelines? How are we going to protect, it may be coming up in the site plan, and I certainly hope it will, but any trees that come down, any rocks that come out, we need to make sure that along that shoreline we revegetate if this goes through. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cairns, I will remind you that if you do want to speak to something like that, we'll save it for the debate stage. This is the time for questions, so I'll go to Councillor Jorgensen. Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just touching on the parking again, just to be clear, I think I heard Mr. Ager say that because we have this project, Phase 1 and Phase 2 are going to share this underground parking structure. So is it correct to say before any of that could happen, then all the conditions for Phase 1 would have to be met before that any construction could happen with that underground parking for either? Is that's what I think I heard from you.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Jorgensen. Great question, and it is unique when we see multi-phase development. It's best practice that all phases of development are contemplated on one site plan, so the site functions properly. And in doing that, yes, all the conditions or lifting of the holding provisions would need to be met at that time before building permits could be issued. But that also goes further into the studies and the servicing works, and all that would need to be done before the holding provisions come off. Then the holding provisions would be lifted. Then the site plan agreement would be approved before any of that construction. So yes, because they are sharing, it's our understanding that all the development will be on one comprehensive site plan. Because as Mr. Sherbak pointed out, one can't really function without the other.
Subsequent?
It's still on the parking, if I may. I seem to recall that we have a policy now, and perhaps it's Mr. Stacy that should be answering this, but he's not with us. But Director Halford, I believe that the official policy that we've put in place is that what we're calling the steamships parking lot is now dedicated to the steamships, and it's up to them to work with us to try and control that somehow. Is my understanding correct on that? Because that was a concern, of course, of as my colleague has said, Mr. Miller and others. But I believe we did come to some kind of agreement that it's not for the general public, that particular lot. I don't remember.
Director?
The number.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. Director Stacey's in the process of negotiating that agreement right now, and I believe when it's ready, council will be, it'll be brought to council for consideration. But yes, that's the note. That's the idea, is that parking will be mostly dedicated to the steamships, and the folks at the Rosso Group have been made aware that that would be part of that, and as Mr. Sherbak alluded to, are aware that that's something that they're going to have to, and what we had notionally talked about at the public meeting as well, that we had recognized that there was a need for dedicated parking space there for the wharf, or for the steamships, and obviously not wanting to tie anyone's hands in terms of ability for that business to grow and develop. So yes, it's in the works, and I believe the agreement, I don't believe it's been brought here yet, but it will be, and he's working on it right now.
Okay, and I can see our CAO is nodding his head in agreement with that, so it's, thank you, body language. Okay, so Councillor Varney, you had your light on, but now your light is off, so I just wanted to know where you're at. Okay, Councillor Varney?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. And this may have connect up with Councillor Karen's question to Mr. Agar, but if the sewer system needs to be rerouted, is that a cost to the Rosso Group, or is the town going to be responsible for that? Thank you.
Mr. Agar?
Thank you, Your Worship. That cost would be solely bared by the applicant and not the town or the District of Muskoka.
Okay, sure, I'm going to go to Director Halford. Do you wanted to clarify something?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think there was some confusion. I just thought with one of the comments from the members of the public, the sanitary, I can't remember the term that he used, but sanitary sewer is something different than the stormwater management. So I just wanted to articulate that. There was a comment about a so-called sanitary, well, that's a sewer, just in layman's terms. So the sewer is the one that needs to be moved, or will likely need to be moved under the road. The stormwater is the one that's not being touched. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, Council, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Agar, I need the cheaters now. Are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of Council as a result of these proceedings?
Thank you, Your Worship. As detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending that the applications be approved.
The official plan amendment and zoning bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon if there are no further questions, and I declare this public meeting to be completed. So council, we're just about 2 hours in. Oh, okay. The clerk is suggesting that we do a Shore Road closure public meeting, and then we'll come back for bylaws. So we'll do that, because I wouldn't mind a 5-minute break. We won't be long. So I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number SRC 0102-2024 for Chikilo. I will now ask for any comments by the applicants or their agent if they are attending in person. Okay, seeing none. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending in person? If so, approach the podium. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from council on the Shore Road closure? Okay, seeing none. I'll now ask the Director of Development Services, Melissa Halford, if there are any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Staff would recommend that council approve the related bylaws as outlined in the staff report.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. Okay, so council, I'm going to say we will come back for bylaw for bylaw discussion at 5 o'clock. It's 4:53 right now, so we will take 7 minutes. And for members of the public, the conversation amongst council would happen at that stage. Okay? Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started. We're ready to go. It's 5 o'clock. Okay. So, welcome back. Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Johnston, second by Councillor Jorgensen. Be it resolved that report number DV 2025-05, Shore Road Closure 09-2024, Savin, Muldrew Lake, be received for information, and that council hereby declare the following lands as surplus. Part of the original Shore Road Allowance OSRA in front of Lot 31, Concession 12 in the former Township of Morrison, now in the Town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, municipally known as 900 South Muldrew Lake Road. Are there any questions, or Director Halford, you were going to speak to this?
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify for council. As you may recall, at Committee of the Whole, earlier this month, there was a deputation regarding, from the same property owner, regarding a road closure request. So that is a separate request from what you have here before you this evening. This evening is the Shore Road allowance in front of their property. And what they were speaking about at Committee of the Whole had to do with the road allowance access over it leading to water. So 2 different matters. Just wanted to advise you of that in case the name rung a bell.
Okay, council, does that spark any questions? Nope. Okay, pretty standard stuff. I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Councillor Varney, did you want to speak to this, or? No. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, great. Everybody voted? Great, and that carries, thank you. It is moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Cairns. Be it resolved that report number DV 2025-06, RE issuance of cancellation certificate for consents be received for information, and that bylaw number 2021-14, being a bylaw to provide for the delegation authority for uncontested consent approvals, be updated to include the issuance of cancellation certificates as a staff delegated function. Mr. Ager, you're going to tell us about this?
Thank you, Your Worship. The report speaks for itself, but to really not get too bogged down in the details of the Planning Act, changes were made to the Planning Act that now allow for things that are called cancellation certificates. The report is looking to amend the delegation bylaw to give staff the authority to approve those. A cancellation certificate, for your information, is something that can be issued to undo a consent, and you might ask, why do you want to undo a consent, but you can't add lands to a lot that has gone through a consent. So when we create new lots or do things like a lot addition and we are putting a condition on the lots to merge together, and we don't do title searches after the fact, it can be found out that the lots actually can't merge because in the 90s or in the early 2000s, one of those lots went through consent. So this is the process in which the town would have the delegated authority, specifically the Director of Development Services or their delegate, to issue that certificate to put a cancellation of consent on one of those lots to allow them to merge. From an efficiency standpoint, it saves staff the ability to write an additional staff report for something that's really already been considered by the Committee of Adjustment, because the staff report's already written saying it's consistent with the official plan and the Planning Act for these lots to merge, and really that cancellation certificate is just facilitating a condition of consent. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the nuances of this.
Okay, clear as mud. Council? I mean, I think when you read the report, it lays it out a little clearer than that, but Councillor Jorgensen, you had something to ask?
Well, thank you. No, just a comment that we've seen a couple of these, I think, at Committee of Adjustment, and it's just as clear as mud there. So we're happy. I'm happy to pass it back to staff to handle this, because we have to rely on them 100% at committee as well.
Okay, so is there anything else, anyone? All right, well, I'll call the question. Please vote. And that carries, thank you. Okay, council, it is moved by Councillor Strength, second by Councillor Varney. Just remind you of how our procedure works. If you'd like to pull any of these separately, please let me know after I read them off, and we will vote on them separately. If you want to deny, defer, or discuss. So it's moved by Councillor Strength, second by Councillor Varney. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read, passed, and engrossed into the bylaw book. Bylaw number 2025-04, zoning, Freeburn, Beaver Ridge Road. Bylaw number 2025-05, OPA, TRG, Cherokee Holdings. Bylaw number 2025-06, TRG, Cherokee Holdings. Bylaw number 2025-07, Shore Road Closure A, Trakillo, Riley Lake. Bylaw number 2025-08, Shore Road Closure B, Trakillo, Riley Lake, and bylaw number 2025-09, Delegated Authority for Consent Approvals. So, Councillor Varney?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull number 2 and number 3, please.
Okay. So, anybody else want to pull anything? Okay, so I'm going to ask Madam Clerk that we'll vote on the 2, 3, the other 4. Okay, so please vote on the other 4. And those carry, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Varney, you wanted to kick off the discussion here?
Yes.
You have to press your button. Yeah. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I feel council's mandate is to preserve the character, at least we're told, to preserve the character of the urban core and iconic locations that contribute to the town and Muskoka's heritage. This area holds significant historical value. It was the starting point for settlers, and this is the last bit of open space left. Council members have the right to consider the broader interests of the municipality when making decisions on approvals. They can weigh the project's benefits against its potential impact on the community and its historical and cultural significance. At what point is there too much development? Environmental concerns with more boat traffic, chemicals from construction, waste, and effluent making their way into our waterway. I respect our professional planners in this town and the work they are asked to do, but as a councillor, I feel I have the right to question how this affects our town and our citizens. This adds more to tourists missing our main street, which is really dying, where everybody will then be directed to go down to the wharf. So I'm putting this on the table for discussion, and I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I just was doing some research on the District Municipality of Muskoka's Regional Climate Change and Adaptation Plan, dated 2023, and on, I think it's page 42, it just says, ensure your property has a natural edge. Muskoka Watershed, and I'm reading directly from the report, if I may. Muskoka Watershed Council offers Watersheds Canada Popular, the Natural Edge program in Muskoka area. Shorelines are one of the richest environments on Earth, but they are also among the most threatened. Habitat loss and degradation, water quality impairments, and increasing pressures from shoreline developments. It can deteriorate our lakes and rivers, making them a priority for environmental stewardship and restoration. Protecting your shoreline can help support ecosystems and lake health, which has countless environmental, social, and financial benefits. So that just goes to my statement earlier, and Your Worship, I apologize for bringing it forward earlier, but I do have some really big concerns with the environment, with the amount of, possible salt that could be used that would be going directly in the lake. I want to be sure that, and I'm sure that staff will be quite aware, but the private contractors who do some of the work in town are not mandated to protect or to apply the amount of salt which is needed. So I'm very concerned that we be turning our beautiful Muskoka Bay into a saltwater pool. I'm also very concerned that the high-density development is going to make a big difference to the neighboring properties. They have, expressed concerns in regards to visually seeing this big building, and I'm just saying it as, it's just going to be a big white wall. Whether that's the color or not, I don't know. I'm sure that they'll be able to make it fit in with the heritage theme and our development that was down at the wharf that has specific criteria in the ways that the buildings are built. That's all part of what comes out of this binder. There were certain colors to be chosen. There were certain designs to be proposed. So I'm very, very concerned about the natural stormwater management techniques, also that is talked about in our lake plan. So I cannot again vote in favor of this. My history in which I call Sagamo Park, which it's always been to me, goes way back to actually almost 65 years now. And it's just too big of a density. So when the wharf was being developed, there were things in this brochure, this book, the guidelines that were first started. All the development pretty much was going to be all along the boardwalks, all along the shoreline, and it was the mandate of the public that came before us and the council of the day that made sure that we push that development further back away and that there would be a nice pathway. The only things that were permitted were the 2 restaurants on the waterfront, and of course our beautiful Muskoka Discovery Center was able to do that. But the rest of the development was asked in this specific wharf area, development area, which I still don't understand how it could be part of the wharf on the end of that lane, but I don't remember changing that or adding it to the official plan back in the days, and that just goes with my memory. But I'm disturbed that this is a huge development for a small parcel of land, and that's all I can say. I just can't support it.
I've got a question. Weren't you on council when the wharf and the condos were approved?
Yes, Your Worship, I certainly was. And that's why the condos were moved back off the water's edge, because the original design of those condos were going to be along the water.
Okay.
And they were put back, not only were they put back, they were put back another roadway and then behind so that they would not be on the development. And I had no problem with them being that far back at all. I just we didn't agree with the development being right on the water's edge.
Just to be clear, these are not on the water, right? These are not fronting on the water. And there is a road in between. These are not on the water. Let's be clear about what we're talking about. These are not waterfront lots. They're between, there's a road between them. They're on Cherokee Lane. So I just want to be clear that these do not touch the water, these lots. just so we're perfectly clear. Okay? Counselor Jorgensen?
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to touch on a few points here. First of all, I'm just going to start with the notion of planning is about managing change. That's why we have planning, because things change. And you want things to change in a coordinated way. That's why we have our official plan. The official plan has designated those lands for many years for this type of development. There's no question, and I understand completely the abutting neighbors and why, they feel that this is being imposed on them. However, again, I have to say that the official plan has said that this type of thing could happen on these lands for many, many years. It's no different from the project we have, projects we have going up on First Street. That's a big change for the people on that street. Anywhere where you're taking a property and putting multi-residential on it, there's no question there's a direct impact to the neighbors on each side. I acknowledge that. However, this is why, again, we have an official plan, because the official plan outlines for you plainly to see where growth is going to be directed. And this particular area is where growth has been, it's been identified for growth for many, many years. I want to just talk on a bit. I know there's concern about, for example, the stormwater management, the stream that handles stormwater. Well, that stormwater comes from all parts of town in that area, not just beside it. And in fact, there may be more inputs from outside of this project into that stormwater management, because the stormwater management for this particular project will be done according to current standards, where there's a lot of properties that have, for many, many years, our storm sewers have flowed into that very same stream, making their way into the lake, and probably, potentially, have less control on it. The opportunity for more salt to come in from other parts of town than it may, given the new standards under which this area will be developed in. So, it's very difficult for me to sit here as a councillor and say, we have identified through our official plan these lands for this type of development, and when someone comes forward and says, well, that's the kind of development I want to do, for us to say, oh, well, no, we weren't, we didn't really mean that we wanted that development. We just identified it, but we weren't expecting it was really going to happen. Something like that. Like, unfortunately, this is the mechanism, for identifying what type of development goes where. The province tells us that, growth should occur in the urban area. This is the urban area. Yes, it happens to be on water. We have to be careful with how we do it. But these lands have been identified for many, many years now for this type of development. So, I think as a council, we need to stand by our official plan and permit this kind of development when somebody's coming forward and we have staff in place and we have policies in place that make sure it's done properly. But overall, this is the type of development that's been identified for many years. I'm repeating myself, but to me, it's quite obvious.
I'm going to go to Councillor Strength.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To expand on that, I completely agree with Councillor Jorgensen. And as Mr. Ager has repeatedly told us, there are so many checks and balances that are going to ensure that we do that it is done safely and considerately, and taking into things like the watershed and development. even though we're not talking about the development on the water tonight, we're talking about across the street. So I think that, you know, it's recognized that we're going to do it safely and with consideration.
Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Well, I'm a little bit surprised by these comments because, first of all, I want to reiterate what Councillor Varney said. I have the greatest respect for the professionals in our planning department team. I really do. They do their job very well. But let's be clear about something, and Councillor Varney touched on it. Professional staff in any municipality, when they assess a project or a proposal, they are bound by legislation, and they're constrained by legislation. There's only so many things that they can do. For example, the issue came up tonight about a concern regarding boat traffic out in the bay. That was a concern we had during Phase 1. And I don't think that's something that is contained in the regulations. I agree with Councillor Jorgensen that we've got a very good official plan, and we should abide by it. But that presupposes, and I hope I'm wrong, Councillor, that we can't ask questions about it. That we just simply, if all the boxes are checked, there's no need to talk about it. And that rather is, I find, somewhat. I'm taken aback by that, a little bit insulted. For the record, I'd rather not vote on this tonight. What I would suggest is we defer it, because I'm saying that I agree with those that say we've got an official plan. It's designed to make sure that things are done properly and safely, as Councillor Strength has said. But that doesn't mean we can't ask questions, and that doesn't mean we can't make it better. So as I said, I would rather not have a vote on this tonight, because I would have to vote against it. When we had this discussion on Phase 1 2 years ago, Council, in its wisdom or not, agreed to a pause with the proposal. And the proposal was sent back to the developer and said, in light of the concerns that were expressed by the public at those meetings and by Council, would you be prepared to make some amendments to the plan to address some of those concerns? Not all of them. And to his credit, the applicant did that. He had discussions with a lot of the members of the public, with some of the businesses that are affected, like, for example, Muskoka Steamship, and a plan came back that was improved from the original one we looked at. The majority of the public were not all of a sudden in favor of the project, but a lot of them felt that their voices had been heard, and the plan was amended slightly, and they said, I'm not as opposed to it as I was before. I think that's something that Council has an obligation to do, to listen to our citizens. Again, I acknowledge Councillor Strength and Councillor Jorgensen's comment that we've got a good official plan. So, we can't stop development by saying, well, yes, it meets all these requirements, but we just need to move forward. Yes, I'd like to be able to do that, but I also feel it's my responsibility, and ours in this room, to talk about some of the things that are beyond the scope of our wonderful planning department. And so my suggestion, and to go back to the pause that we did 2 years ago, the applicant and I talked almost every week on the phone. And when the pause was made, he said that he was in agreement with that. This will make, the company realized right in the beginning that the support of the community was going to be vital to the success of that project. If the entire community didn't want that to be there and had saw no benefit in that whatsoever, that's a difficult business proposition. So again, to the credit of the applicant, they went back and heard the concerns that were expressed at a couple of public meetings, talked to people, and the plan that came back that we ultimately voted on was much improved from the plan before. I'd like to think that could be done again. So again, I don't want to vote on this tonight, because if we do, I'll have to vote no, because there's too many unanswered questions. I'm not comfortable when a number of questions remain out there unanswered. This is January. I don't believe that there's anything urgent mandating that this be approved tonight. I'd like to be put in a position where I could at least consider approving it, but I can't tonight. So, thank you.
Okay, so I do have Councillor Hunter and Councillor Jorgensen, but as the legislation says, the mayor shall or may debate. And I'm going to say this is deja vu. We did this I can see where this is playing out. I'm just going to call it as I see it. Last time, we deferred it. Let's hear from the public. Let's get the information. The same councillors who wanted the information still voted against it. We ended up at the OLT. It cost the taxpayers money, and the same people are going to vote against it again. So will I be in support of a deferral? Absolutely not. I am going to go to Councillor Jorgensen. I didn't hear one thing from anyone what on basis you would defer. So I'm not going down, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So I will not be supporting a deferral. This is not a waterfront lot. This is in keeping with the look and the feel. Every other town in Muskoka has development on the water. And you know why? Because that's where people want to be. We hear from our businesses that we want people there. We want people, we want traffic here. We want people spending money. We want people on the ships. Every year we have the steamships come and ask us for money. Guess what? There's money to be made by approving development. So that's my stand. I'm going to go to Councillor Jorgensen, but I will not be supporting a deferral.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I too, I think I'm going to bring up what happened with the previous version of this, because I believe we had, if I'm not mistaken, we had 2 deferrals. The first deferral, yes, the applicant made substantial changes based on the public input. The second deferral was with no request from this council to make any change, except we'll go and talk about it a little bit. And in fact, the application came back after that second deferral with no changes, as I recall. And there's no question, I agree completely with my colleague here that if there are questions that are still unanswered that would warrant a deferral, I would probably support a deferral. But I have not heard from any of my fellow councillors any questions that have not been answered yet. Specifically, I'd also like to address the boat traffic. As someone, I go down to the wharf and quite often you see the boat ramps in use. Development anywhere in town will increase the boat traffic in the bay, I'm sorry to say. Anywhere in town. If we're adding a lot of new development, as we are, down at the south end, on First Street, new subdivisions, you're going to get boat traffic from all those locations at the wharf, because that's where people are going to launch their boats and go out into Muskoka Bay. So to suggest that this particular development is going to increase boat traffic in the bay, I don't buy it. Because as the town grows, we're going to have more boat traffic in the bay. I'm sorry to say, that's a reality. So that's not a reason in my mind to jump on this particular project and say, oh, this is going to increase boat traffic in the bay. Any development in town, any new housing is going to do the same thing. So again, I have not heard a reason to defer at this point. I don't hear, I think all the questions that were brought up at the public meeting have been addressed. I'm not hearing any unanswered questions myself.
I'm going to go to Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I would agree with Councillor Jorgensen. Any questions that I had tonight have been answered. I'm not really clear on what a deferral, what we would be requesting for them to come back, what planning issue that we'd be asking for them to come back. And so my question was about Grovette Street. You know, I had some questions about parking that were answered. I feel Mr. Egger, Mr. Sherback have answered those questions for me. So I'm okay with approving it because I'm okay with having all the answers and knowing that site plan control will take care of some of those unanswered questions that we have. That's just my comments.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Robinson, and then Councillor Johnston did request a deferral. So after I hear from Councillor Robinson, I'm going to ask if there is a seconder for a deferral, and we're going to vote on a deferral. So Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think I'm confused on the deferral because we've answered a lot of the questions tonight, and I think this is the platform right now to answer any questions you have. And from what I've heard, every question got answered, but I haven't heard anything, why would we defer it? Other than you said the questions that you want to ask, but why wouldn't we ask them now and get them out on the table? I just don't, I'm confused about the deferral, so I don't support that at all right now.
Okay, so Councillor Johnston has proposed a deferral. Is there a seconder for a deferral? Okay, yeah, well, we're gonna do one thing at a time here. So if we can't get a deferral on the table, we're not gonna talk to a deferral. So is there a seconder for a deferral? Okay, so I don't see a seconder for a deferral. So, Councillor Johnston, did you want to talk just to the application as a whole, or was your hand up about the deferral?
Neither, Your Worship, through you. I just want to make two comments. First of all, there's more to this issue than what's around this table. My suggestion was, I guess my English is deteriorating as I age. I was suggesting a deferral so that the applicant might consider whether or not there were some changes to the proposal that might amend some of the concerns that were expressed by the citizens. If that's not the case, I'm fine with the withdrawal of the deferral. I never said, Councillor Jorgensen, that there was a problem with boat traffic. I said, let's look at it. That's what I said. Let's look at it. But in any event, I withdraw my request. But it needs to be said, I'm insulted by the fact that it was suggested that the fact that members of council voted a certain way 2 years ago, that it wound up at the OLT, and it cost the municipality money. We were doing our job. That's what we're required to do. And I don't look at my decision-making process and say, well, is this going to cost the municipality money? I'm elected to vote my conscience, and that's what I did that night, and I would do it again. Thank you.
Okay, so if, Councillor Varney, if it's about the planning application before us, I'll give you an opportunity to speak to it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so if it's not about that, then I can't speak.
No, we're here to talk about the planning application before us, yes.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
So through
Great.
you, I'm agreeing with Councillor Johnston that as a councillor, we're here representing people. We know what our esteemed planners have told us, and we respect them. But if we can't come to council and give our opinions and our feelings on what our constituents are telling us and how we feel about it, then why are we here if we have to agree with everything? And I do agree with the planners and what they say. And I respect them. But there are certain things that I feel, as councillors, you have a right to speak your mind. And if it goes against what the planners are saying, then we should be allowed to say that without being, told we can't do what we want to do. I'm sorry, but I find this very frustrating, but thank you.
Okay, so let's just be clear. Nobody said you couldn't say anything. We were just asking for a planning. We can turn this down all day. We can defer it all day, but we need to have a planning. We need to have a planning reason to do that. So I'm going to call the question. We have a planning matter before us. So I think everybody had the opportunity to speak to it. We know, so, okay. So, okay, great. So that carries, thank you. It's moved by Counselor Cairns, second by Counselor Hunter. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting dated November 26, 2024 be approved as circulated. Please vote for that, or on that. Oh. Point of order. Counselor Jorgensen?
Now it's read. Were we voting for both the OP amendment and at the same time? Okay, just clarifying that. Thank you.
Okay, so did we vote for the minutes? Okay, so. Okay, and it's moved by Counselor Johnston, second by Counselor Jorgensen. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2025-10 to confirm the council meeting held on January 28, 2025 be passed. All in favor, please vote. Motion to adjourn, Counselor Strength and Counselor Robinson. Please vote. Okay, you want, we can stay